Hello and welcome to this episode of the Digipod. I'm Faria Aziz. Today I'm joined by executive producer of DawnNews English, Neha Dagia, and also Sahar Baloch, who's a reporter and has worked for Pakistani as well as international outlets. Thank you both for joining us today. What we are discussing is as the conflict between India and Pakistan, and we're seeing continued escalation. Of course, there's an information overload. There's also misinformation and disinformation. But also, how do media outlets, in a time of social media, where sources of information have changed, how are they? What are the sources that they're relying on? How are newsrooms catching up with the pace of information, what is out there, so that they don't become redundant, but they also have to factor in certain editorial practices and checks to ensure that it's verified information. But then, how do you verify in real time? Neha, if you can perhaps begin with you, right? So, as being in the newsroom currently, and given what is happening, daily, hour to hour, things are changing. How are you able to, and people are posting on social media. So for example, if it's about drones all over the country, right, there will be people who are posting videos saying, I've heard this, I've seen this, etc. And what do you do in that instance before there is any official verification, before your reporter can get out there? How do you report on something that people are clearly talking about and already know about?
Yeah, so there's massive pressure in breaking news to be the first, right? Especially when it comes to conflicts like India and Pakistan, where a single unverified tweet about an attack or casualties can, trigger panic. Like we saw the other day, Defense Minister Khwaja Asif told Bloomberg TV, and also he spoke to a couple of journalists, and he said that we had captured some Indian soldiers, and like within 15 minutes he took the claim back. So when there is when journalists are denied access to conflict zones, or when in general also there's a lack of access, like when it's LOT, when it comes to militancy or Kashmir, um, then I think your most safest and most reliable reporting often comes from the ground, right? Like the local journalists, fixers, humanitarian workers, or even citizen journalism now, because eyewitness accounts play a huge role in that. And now that we're living in the age of Twitter and social media, most of the eyewitness accounts that we get are from people tweeting or putting up TikToks or Instagrams of, say, like a drone attack somewhere nearby. And I feel like the local journalists and people from that area, they know the terrain, they speak the language, and they can pick up subtle shifts on ground, like a parachute maybe, or a drone that's like we just saw there were 25 drone attacks since morning across Pakistan. But I think all of this comes with like an ethical responsibility. For instance, the Pakistan claims that it shot down 5 Indian jets. India has so far confirmed that 4 jets were shot down. 3 of them only after Reuters confirmed the story, and the Indian government had no choice but to accept that, okay, jets crashed. But even then, we have to look at the language, right? Pakistan claims that we shot down Indian jets. India says that jets just crashed, out of nowhere. There's no reason behind it. So I feel the one thing that you can rely on always is on ground reports. Witnesses, fixers, journalists, humanitarian workers, and of course citizen journalists who act as witnesses.
So just the pace at which information is being shared and received and the verification, and you're taken and overtaken now. It's not about daily news cycles; it's like hourly news cycles almost, right? How do you then? I mean, because your experience of reporting, whether it's been on internal or international conflicts as well, where there are contested claims. Whether it's between two countries, as Neha has also been pointing out, or whether internally whether something's happened on the spot, what are the verification purposes where you can, make sure that the story is accurate, but you also get it out in time? How do you keep up with that today?
Fariha, what happens is, as I was saying before the interview began as well, that whether it's an India-Pakistan conflict or whether it is an internal conflict, what you do in a newsroom is to basically try and be at that spot as soon as possible. Because most of the times, when you reach a spot, even a day or two later, what happens is that there are rumors going around. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that are already like circulating. So in that situation, the best is to keep in touch with your news organization there in India, and then to basically get all the eyewitness accounts from there. And most of the times, people do make videos, people do make like, a lot of these shaky or blurry videos or whatever, but they actually end up helping you out a lot within a newsroom. Because what happens is, as there is like a full barrage of like misinformation spreading online, especially on Twitter, which is now used for all kinds of like narrative building and contesting different narratives, what we can get is like a clear picture from the ground, at least, because most eyewitnesses, like for instance, today I was looking at this video from Lahore's Walton Road, and there was this one person who's also an activist in Lahore. He was sharing like how, there was like a drone attack in the morning, and then a drone fell down or was shot down. And then, he was sharing like where he was and how he saw this. And, this seems like it was shot by India and whatever. So that basically gives credence to whatever information we are giving out. So you do look at people. We do have, even at the BBC, we have like this BBC Verify. But the only problem is that by the time they get to verify something, there is a whole barrage of new misinformation that comes in. Like there's an entire, like, way.
So again, in terms of holding back, but what we're also seeing now, is that even online, for example, newspaper or media channel websites, that there is a live feed, right? And so as and when something is happening, you're of course putting it out there. Language, of course, is important as well, right? And of course, you do tell people that it's a developing story, and so things could change. What amount of editorial discretion, judgment goes into ensuring what is being put out, whether it's in written form or even in digital content?
So, in conflict zones, hearsay spreads fast, and so does propaganda. And like Sahar mentioned, by the time you debunk one piece of information, there's a barrage of other information that needs to be debunked. So when something is posted online or say in a WhatsApp group, for us, one claim isn't enough. If someone says that a drone hit a victim in a civilian area, we don't stop there. We look for multiple video clips. We speak to someone nearby. We check the local media. We compare the statements of witnesses and we compare, official statements. And of course, we always reach out to the officials. And then we also review social media chatter, from that region. That did anyone else pick it up? How many? You basically need like 3 to 4 collaborating threads to treat something as close to being verified. You saw the drone strikes from this morning or the airspace violation. Now, in some of these areas, independent verification is blocked, you know. And we're increasingly relying on open source intelligence, which is your social media, which is your witness account. But this also includes then, satellite imagery and, video geolocations and metadata analysis. The digital forensics, I think, also is kind of crucial when it comes to verifying what what the news development is and what's happening currently.
That element, right? And of course, the tech tools and what you can use are. But what happens, and especially the sources you rely on and how then you word it, for instance, right? Headlines. So as Neha also initially mentioned that Pakistan claims 5 jets were shot down and India's admitted three. Now, of course, locally we are seeing in both countries that it's the state narrative that is dominant, right? So whether Pakistan government officials or ISPR, and that's what the news cycle predominantly is about, or in India, what the government is saying. Internationally, though, obviously, you will see a lot more of both sides. But then in something where India is saying 3, Pakistan is saying 5, what would be that verification? How will it be reported? Whose version is going to prevail?
We have also seen that, like yesterday, we were seeing like this CNN report also, in which the reporter went ahead and spoke with like a senior or a senior French official, intelligence officer, and basically took a comment from him instead, him or her, like, that this is what, the debate is going on about the jet being downed and whether it was yours or not or something, because this reporter kept on saying on Twitter that, he kept on contacting Indian officials to get some response, but there was no response from them as well. So it basically had to be confirmed from a French official, and then they basically said that yes, there is like this one Rafale jet that had been shot down. And it's actually true. I do understand that while working as a local journalist, it's very difficult, and you have to at times rely on whatever the military is saying or whatever the government is saying. But especially in terms of defense, we always go for like what the military has told us, or like, they are stating in their press release. So, but in that case also, there are people who go above and beyond, and they call, like, for instance, the CNN reporter who called up the French official and said that, can you please confirm? Because, both the countries are saying completely different things. So at times, this is also the case that you go for like a third party and you confirm it from there. Because see, when it comes to India and Pakistan, it becomes very difficult to get like any kind of information there. I was just reading today that all the Indian newspapers are sounding exactly the same today. They all have like the official confirmations, official statements, and there is no other, like, space for any third analysis or any, like, to de-escalate the war or anything like that. So we know that this is not going to happen. So the onus is then on, our side. And then in this situation, working for a foreign news organization actually works a lot, because, then people do share information. So for instance, the High Commission will say something, or the Foreign Office will be like quick to respond or say something. So at times you can get information from these sources also.
On the point about Masood Azhar also, because I mean, this is again in terms of competing narratives, where India was saying that we have launched this attack to avenge Pahalgam, and that it was launched from sites within Pakistan. It had links to do with actors in Pakistan, right? And the Indian narrative has been that we were attacking terrorist hideouts. Pakistani narrative, of course, is that civilians have been targeted and civilian sites have been targeted. And there has been, of course, until recently, where now there's a BBC report apparently quoting Masood Azhar saying that family members have been. But then again, that distinction between, those are still civilians, or you've gone after people. Now, these things are going to drive reactions, responses, justifications by what has happened, right? Going forward, what do you see in terms of competing narratives, Neha and Sahar, as we're just going to close off? Because the tensions are obviously rising, and we're going to have these competing narratives, and ascribing of responsibility and blame, which is going to lead to then what follows.
Yeah, the thing is that, when you speak about competing narratives, at the end of the day, as a journalist, if, like, the information is confirmed that yes, it was, because as I said that, one of my colleagues late at night, he was like on the desk on the BBC, and he got this phone call from Bahawalpur saying that, a mosque is being attacked in by an Indian missile, and this is like, the space that was. Although the competing narrative is also there that Masood Azhar was not living there anymore and he was not using that place anymore, and yet it was targeted. And then 57 more civilians were also targeted as a result of that. So definitely civilians were targeted. But at the same time, this is also like part of that truth. So there are, like, some people from Pakistan, within Pakistan, like, some experts who are from the area, they kept on like debunking this, that no, it was not Masood Azhar's place or something or the other. It may not be. But the thing is that, this is something that he chose to come out and say or talk about. And then there were other militant experts or whoever, they also sort of verified it. So then you have to go with this. And then as it is, you can't like hold back on information in such a scenario, where like it is there out there, and then you can't like be, oh, we can't say this because it would sound unpatriotic. So you have to basically say things because they are there. Otherwise, it can be misused. And when it comes to India, of course, there is no verification. There is no such like editorial understanding of things as well. So, they are like literally running everything as is coming, and there's no questioning there. So at least on our part, we are questioning a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And your patriotic credentials do get questioned at a time like this. If so, how do you navigate that space now?
So I think particularly during India-Pakistan crisis, there's always immense pressure, internally and externally, to lean patriotic. But I think we've learned that loaded language, especially in headlines or in your stories, that damages credibility and escalates tensions. It creates panic. So we always ask ourselves, when you're writing a story, would this sentence still stand if you were reporting objectively? And if not, then you rewrite. Like Sahar said, at Dawn, we always make sure that even if we're late, at least the news that we're giving out to our readers, it's authentic, it's verified. You do have to make those editorial decisions that what the information that is coming in, whether it goes with the state narrative or not. But then if it's the truth and if it's verified, then you have to put it out. It's your responsibility to ensure that information is out there. I am glad that we are still able to do that in Pakistan, because we've been following Indian media, and there we've noticed that the state narrative is the news that is coming out of all news channels, news websites, and newspapers. So that is something I think we're glad that we enjoy here, that we can question the state and we can go and report something that is not included in the press releases that we get from the government or the ministries.
So at least there's some, and the irony, of course, everybody is aware, and we continue to talk about the curbs that, Pakistani journalists also face, and the kind of environment, especially digitally, the kind of laws, etc. But still navigating all of that, there's still some level of scrutiny and critical thinking, although it just doesn't come from the state. I think it also comes from the citizenry and their responses and reactions to their own journalists, and why aren't you peddling a more, or speaking in a more patriotic tone, and why are you raising the kind of questions, and everybody should be sort of on the same page, right? And I'm sure those pressures. Any final comments before we round off? As we go forward, as tensions are escalating, and there's going to be these competing narratives and disputed facts, what is your advice or prescription to fellow journalists, but also citizens as they consume news, particularly via social media?
To hold back on knee-jerk reactions, to basically not like jump on any kind of news and be like, oh, this must have happened, and this is like, what it is. And even as a journalist, like, not like just having a knee-jerk reaction and like posting something or saying something, and then, you may have to like delete that later on. It's always better to sort of, wait it out, like just to let the story unfold, because at times this is what it is. The initial information is just that, it's initial information. You can't like build up a story on that. So you have to wait it out. And once you like, get a picture, even if it's a bit later, like, coming an hour later of other organizations, just wait it out and you will at least have a very credible story rather than, something which is full of all sorts of things. Because even at the BBC, we are told like if something happens, you're not like going live is like the last option ever in such a situation. Like just don't go live, because once you're live, it's unrecorded, it's unedited. So don't say anything that you will regret later on. So it's always better to sort of wait it out. And once you have all the facts, then sort of, say something.
Disinformation isn't just sloppy reporting anymore. It's often state-sponsored, and you'll notice that the same graphic or the same headline is being, say, tweeted by multiple blue and gray tick accounts, and within minutes, right? It's not by accident. It's coordinated. It's a coordinated narrative. It's a narrative of. So I think it's important to track information, cross-check it with sources on ground, and even now we have AI detection tools that help you verify something. And it's important to counter viral misinformation quickly with, verified explainer. Otherwise, panic all over.
And this is all that we have on the DigiPod. We will obviously continue to monitor as news and information is put out on social media and through media channels, and as this situation persists. Thank you, Sahar. Thank you, Neha.